Permaculture defines the solutions. It's a system that takes the knowledge of nature to create a system that provides the needs of humanity in a way that endlessly enriches the life on Earth and the living systems. So biodiversity increases and biomass increases. It's the knowledge that gives us a design solution that we can come up with. We can become the most positive element in the environment rather than the most negative. Humanity can be as positive in the environment, creating more environmental richness than any other element. Permaculture starts with ethics. It's an ethical design science, and it starts with earth care, people care, and return of surplus to the first two ethics. It's a holistic design science. It's not just about farming and gardening. It makes connections between water harvesting, soil creation, the supply of useful living resources, energy systems, waste systems, local economics, and people systems to create a permanent culture. We need to evolve a different way of thinking. We need an evolution of humanity that sees a design priority to move towards a functional ecology economy. And once we turn around and orientate towards that as a solution, we all go into an earth repair mode. It is a design priority direction that has an abundance of clean air, an abundance of clean water, an abundance of clean food, sensible, energy-efficient housing, warmth and good community. Then we can say we are civilized and developed.
Never been a time to make things as good as right now. Between what's available on the internet, like the stuff on YouTube, the stuff on Instructables, Make Magazine, between the quality of your teachers who know so much and the incredible availability of parts and tools and supplies, there's almost nothing that you can't make, almost nothing you can't make, if you really try. Now, in my career, I've made a lot of stuff. I've made telescopes, I've made microscopes. I know people who've made electron microscopes. I personally made flamethrowers. I've made a 4-story high trebuchet. I've made some really dangerous stuff. My favorite is I made a BattleBot when BattleBots were kind of big. You know, it was metal, it had 20 horsepower motors, it had a carbon tip fireman cutoff saw in the front. That thing could, you know, eat its way out of a steel room. I've made just so many things. But not everything you have to make is dangerous to be cool. The point is that it's just fun to make stuff. And if you've got a really good idea, you can probably do it. Now, there are different styles of making things. There's do-it-yourself, and that's like, well, I'm going to go fix the brakes on my car or put siding on my house. And that's an interesting kind of DIY. But there's hacking, where you take one item that's purposed for something else and turn it into something, you know, cooler, something different. There's bricolage, which means making things from found objects. There's kitting, which means you buy a kit, something complicated probably, and put it together. And there's inventing. And inventing is the best. The best kind of making things involves not just following directions from people who have done things before, but actually going out there, figuring out how to make something, doing the design yourself, and then actually building it. Today is the very best time. This age is the very best time to be a maker. You can make so many things if you put your mind to it. Get out there, pick something up, because I'll tell you, the stuff you make is way better than the stuff you buy. It's special, it's significant to you, and I really encourage you to do that.
I started a group called Open Source Ecology. We've identified the 50 most important machines that we think takes for modern life to exist. Things from tractors, bread ovens, circuit makers. Then we set out to create an open source, DIY, do-it-yourself version that anyone can build and maintain at a fraction of the cost. We call this the Global Village Construction Set. I needed tools that were robust, modular, highly efficient and optimized, low cost, made from local and recycled materials, that would last a lifetime, not designed for obsolescence. I found that I would have to build them myself. So I did just that. And I tested them. And I found that industrial productivity can be achieved on a small scale. So then I published the 3D designs, schematics, instructional videos, and budgets on a wiki. Then contributors from all over the world began showing up, prototyping new machines during dedicated project visits. So far we have prototyped 8 of the 50 machines, and now the project is beginning to grow on its own. We know that open source has succeeded with tools for managing knowledge and creativity, and the same is starting to happen with hardware too. Our goal is a repository of published designs so clear, so complete that a single burned DVD is effectively a civilization starter kit. I've planted 100 trees in a day. I've pressed 5,000 bricks in one day from the dirt beneath my feet, and built a tractor in 6 days. From what I've seen, this is only the beginning. If this idea is truly sound, then the implications are significant. A greater distribution of the means of production, environmentally sound supply chains, and a newly relevant DIY maker culture can hope to transcend artificial scarcity. We're exploring the limits of what we all can do to make a better world with open hardware technology.
listen. That's the wonderful sound of 760 people in this room consciously listening. It's also the sound of democracy, because democracy requires conscious listening. It's a necessary condition for democracy to function. So this talk is actually a plea to reinstate conscious listening in its rightful place as an essential element of democracy, because I think we've forgotten about it largely, and I seriously believe that democracy is under threat, in danger, as a result of this. Let's have a look at little listening in a bit more detail. I'd like to define listening as making meaning from sound. It's a process which I'm involved in, actually. It's a mental process distinct from hearing, and it's a skill that can be taught, that can be learnt, that can be improved. Most of us, unfortunately, are not very conscious of it. One common mistake is to imagine that everybody listens the same way. Actually, that's not true. Every person in this room has a listening which is unique. It's as individual to you as your fingerprints. That's because we all listen through a set of filters. These filters happen through our life. We're born into a culture, we speak a language, these things affect our listening. And along the way, we accrete values, beliefs, attitudes from our parents, from our friends, from our teachers, from role models. Your road to this point has been very different from mine and from everybody else's in this room. Your filters are different, so your listening is different too. And situationally, when we come into any conversation, we may have expectations or intentions which will shape our listening at that moment. What this all means is that these filters create our perceived reality. And if we are unconscious about the process, it's all too easy for us to think that this meaning-making we're doing, this creative process, is actually the truth, some sort of flat, absolute truth that works for everybody. So I'd like to suggest that it's not just listening that we need, it's conscious listening. It's being aware of this process. So if listening is making meaning from sound, then conscious listening is consciously making meaning from sound. That is, being involved in the process, taking responsibility for the meanings I make. If we go unconscious, listening actually becomes dangerous. We become a victim of our listening, and that way lies a whole world of hurt. If we are conscious of the process, of our part in creating meaning, of our ability to take responsibility for what we're taking in, then we get understanding. Conscious listening always creates understanding in conversation. It stops us from depersonalizing human beings. If we stop listening consciously and we depersonalize, all sorts of horrible things become possible. These things are only possible by depersonalizing and by not consciously listening. Politicians also need to listen to their electorate, don't they? It's not just us listening to each other. Politicians need to do that, and I think the recent European election results indicate that that may not always be the case. Maybe they need to listen more carefully. Incidentally, we describe political efforts to resolve conflict as talks, don't we? Wouldn't they better be described as listens? These are the 5 key elements of conscious listening. It's a cheerful mnemonic as well, because it goes hurrah, which is rather uplifting. The H of hurrah, humility. I'm not always right. If I permit myself to be wrong, then I can learn. The A is awareness of the process, awareness of the fact that I am consciously listening, not just being in the listening, being apart from it and taking responsibility for what I'm doing. The R is respect, for you as a human being and for your right to have views which are not the same as mine. The A, attention. Without paying real attention, it's impossible to listen. You know, listening requires making that person the most important person on this planet for the short time you're listening to them. And tragically, I think there are billions of people on this earth who've never had the experience of being properly listened to like that. And the H, of course, almost the most important thing, a sense of humor. It's the gravest possible mistake to take ourselves too seriously in life and certainly in politics. A sense of humor can defuse almost any conflict. It can certainly right-size it. And if we lose the ability to laugh at life and indeed at ourselves, surely we're less than human. So, little listening. It's not so little, is it? Actually, even though it's silent, it's magnificent in its ability to bring us together as human beings. It permits and underlays civil society and democracy. It's as important in our homes as it is in our debating chambers. So let's teach conscious listening in schools, and let's reinstate conscious listening in its rightful place as at the heart of the entire of democracy and our political process. Starting right now, as you sit here or watch this, make a promise to yourself. From this day forward, listen, and listen consciously.